Welcome, everyone, to the 34th episode of the Drunken Boxing Podcast, coming to you, as always, from the Middle Kingdom in the city of Beijing. Okay, let's hit some Mushin martial culture news. The second episode of the Bagua Zhang, Jingru, Flow Like Water, Drift Like a Cloud was released. There is one more episode to go, and it will be released soon. In the second episode, Jingru talks a bit more about his personal experience and history in training, so go check it out. Also, I am happy to finally say that the third and last part of the hidden history of Shuai Jiao in the Kungfu Explained series was released. This final episode is long and dense with information, and like the entire series, required a huge amount of work and research and investigation in order to compile and prepare. I had to reread books on various topics as well as new documents and books in various languages in preparation for this, and it indeed took months to do. This is why the episode took so long to release. The compilation and editing was also a lot of work, but I'm very pleased with the end result, and I have received some very good feedback about it. So take your time and work through it. I'm sure you will find it fascinating. In connection to this coming Friday, I will be holding a video conversation with Shuai Jiao and Mongolian Bokh practitioners Lavelle Marshall and Emmanuel Papa, which is a new endeavor. And we will discuss aspects related to these topics, as well as answer submitted questions by the public. This will be released next week, following a bit of editing and compiling. Okay, moving on. As always, the various Mushin martial culture merchandise is available on my Teespring store. There is a variety of items available now, so go have a look. If you feel like supporting this podcast indirectly, getting some of the Mushin martial culture merchandise is one way to do it. You can find the store at the link in the show notes. And also another heads up for you guys, I've been working on some merchandise connected to the Hidden History of Shuai Jiao series. So there's going to be some pretty interesting items that will be released as soon as I can complete them in the next couple of months. Some of them are historical items that I have restored that I'm sure you guys that practice Shuai Jiao or are connected with Chinese Shuai Jiao in any shape or form, as well as Mongolian wrestling, will be pretty happy about and keen to get. So keep an eye out for that. Another way to support this podcast, as well as all the Mushin endeavors, is through Patreon. There are general support tiers and a third tier, the Huajin tier, in which you can study the arts of Xingyi Quan and Bagua Zhang in depth. There is already quite an extensive library of lessons on the arts, with additional lessons being released regularly. So if you're interested in learning Xingyi Quan or Bagua Zhang, give the course a try. Currently, as we're going through the curriculum as we speak, the Bagua Zhang learners are focusing on the Lao Ba Zhang, or 8 old palms, or mother palms of the Liang-style Bagua system, and that's quite an in-depth area of study. And with regards to the Xingyi curriculum, they have moved on to the in-depth study of the 12 animals, and it's progressing quite nicely. So if you're interested in these arts, want to delve into them deeper, do give the course a try. The Patreon site may be found at patreon.com/Mushin Martial Culture. That's Mushin Martial Culture, all one word. Okay, on to today's podcast. My guest today is Sudan Jeffers. Sudan has been practicing the martial arts for over 30 years and trained in both the USA as well as in China. He has studied Che-style Xingyi Quan, Dai Family Xinyi, as well as Cheng-style Bagua Zhang under the renowned teacher Li Tailiang, as well as Family Tongbei under Guo Naihui. Additionally, he has studied Shuai Jiao under He Guangda, and he has competed in Shuai Jiao numerous times, achieving good results. He is based in New York City, where he teaches these wonderful life-enriching arts, and he is an all-round great guy. So with that, I give you Sudan Jeffers. Okay, welcome to the Drunken Boxing Podcast, Sudan Jeffers. We've been trying to set this up for a while, and now we finally got it done. How are you doing over there?
I'm doing good. Good, brother. Doing good. Happy to be here. Happy to finally connect one of my longtime friends.
Yeah, and Happy New Year. Chinese New Year, at least. I don't know if you managed to do any celebrating over there.
I've eaten quite a few moon cakes and different things and got my Xingyi Quan on very thoroughly. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Good stuff. Yeah. So... we've known each other online for a while. You've, we've got similar experiences. You've trained on this side of the world. You've done Xingyi. You've done variations thereof. You're an avid lover of Chinese martial arts. But why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction about yourself?
This is a fact. Everything he said, pretty much. Yeah, this is where I ended up. This is what I love. This is what I do. Do or die, I'll say. And I'm pretty much a fan of the whole diaspora of martial arts. I love everything from everything to everything else. I've got my chosen area of study, so I can manage to kind of be good at something and not be okay at too many things. But I love everything from taekwondo to sambo to silat to everything you can think of in the human diaspora of anywhere in the world. We've had the same notion to cultivate and defend and attack, or whatever the case may be. So I'm a fan of just about everything under the sun. But I have my own, thing.
Yeah. That's a good word you used there. Cultivate and use for self-defense and attack, because I think a lot of people kind of don't realize how connected those issues actually are.
Big time.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky thing there. We're into what works. That word works. And it's like working in which way for who? Works in many different ways.
Well, exactly. And as you get older, you need other things to work and other things not to work so much. And then as you get older, some of your own shit in your body stops working, and then you realize, that stuff over there was actually to help me not have this problem that I'm having now. Now it makes sense.
Unless you're a stubborn arse like me, I refuse.
I
refuse to surrender.
Yeah, but I've realized, as I gotten older, and because it's we're kind of already getting into a topic, but it's something that you need to go through to really understand, because if you train in a very casual way and you're not pushing yourself very hard, you can get away with a lot of stuff, and you can get away with stuff not focusing on certain things that you need to, the more serious you go into it, and this was it's kind of a contradictory idea, because people don't realize it like this, but it took me a bit of time to understand this. The deeper you go into the practice, and the harder and more seriously you practice, the more specialized your body becomes in certain ways.
Yes.
And what happens with that is other aspects of your body's movement, and I'm not talking about like martial arts movement, I'm just talking about general and anatomical movement and motion. Yeah. Actually, you can either suffer or be negatively affected, or you become imbalanced in some ways, or the overtraining on certain things actually causes damage, which a lot of people are like, what are you talking about? You're not supposed to have damage from doing martial arts. It's supposed to keep you healthy, and you're supposed to live until 150 because of it. But that's not really true,
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's self-applied, I should say, pressure. We as human beings, we've always reached our best selves through pressure, through challenge, through beating ourselves up. When you're lifting weights, you're tearing muscle only to come back stronger.
Right.
This is the same thing. It works as far as our mental toughness, our overall, fortitude. So, if you were massaging yourself all your life, then you're not going to be really much of anything. So on the contrary, the infamous Mabu, for example, it hurts. But it has a lot of different things. Some people say you're not supposed to be injured from martial arts. Injury is a tricky word,
Yeah. Well, the flip side of that is, apart from the directly strength building, etc., you see specifically in Chinese martial arts, we have these entire set of practices that are just supposed to be mobility building, or just general anatomical, to improve your anatomical functioning, etc. Building. And that's the stuff that a lot of Westerners and non-Chinese martial artists look at and say, yeah, but how do you use that in a fight? But like I said, until you've actually trained into a deep level and you become really, focused in it, you don't realize that it's that stuff that keeps your all your stuff functioning. It's not simply about directly applicable. It's like keeps your body working and not breaking down to the degree it would be broken down if you just carried on single-mindedly, right?
Very good point.
And you see it. don't you see it today, like with the craze with a lot of jiu-jitsu guys that are doing yoga? And I'm like, yeah, but how do you use yoga in a fight? Yeah, but like that's not the point. They're realizing it's supplementary. It's supplementary and helps them excel at the other thing, even though it's not directly applicable in the sense that we'd think of it. Yeah. So
well, that's a funny statement. That's a funny statement when you say jiu-jitsu guys doing yoga. One thing I believe in is what we call in Chinese martial arts a Wenwu Shuangquan, scholar and warrior studies combined. A lot of time, there's a difference between a practitioner and a researcher. So, for example, jiu-jitsu guys doing yoga, for example, that's nothing new because from what I understand, in the Gracie system, they have what they call it gymnastica natural, and that has quite a few yoga exercises in it. You saw Hickson doing a lot of these things, the breath of fire, and so on and so forth. But lo and behold, when I met guys from that school, that skill set later, it's like they never heard of it. They didn't even know that the man of the men actually does that. So that's the limit of their research.
He was deep into it. Deep into it.
Big time, because everything has a wear and tear, and the idea is to preserve so that you can do more, better later. I see this all the time. And this has been a kind of an interesting evolution of my particular journey as far as, we all were at some point like the economy of motion, all these great catchphrases, economy of motion, and that's just for looks, or you want to be direct. Yeah. The closest distance between two things is straight line. And we got really enamored with this economy of motion and effectiveness and usage. However, how many fat practitioners have we seen that could probably fight, but the health isn't. The health stinks. Or you can't move. Right. I run into this today, me being a grown man and being around some younger guys in work and these different things. They just can't do certain things. They can't even kick higher than their own belt.
Yep.
So the idea is, can you move? Because I will end up out moving you. So it's that kind of thing where I spent a lot of years in Xingyi and a lot of economical things. And then I realized, hey, movement is life. And that led me into incorporating Tongbei and a lot of other things that are a lot more expansive and larger movement. And we talk about things being in balance. So they say internal and external must harmonize. And, you don't want to be too far on any end of the scale. So Xingyi, for example, can be very economical in the movement and thus effective to some people. But at the same time, the human body needs movement. So, you look at these things, look at long fist styles, for example, say, that's just, an ignorant mind would say that's just for looks or whatever, not knowing a million details of that. In terms of movement, in terms of body control, in terms of, can you do it? Can you move? Can you move? Can you move at all? Different diasporas, say, as far as northern arts, where there's a lot of long fist styles. And hey, a lot of people in the north are also wrestlers. So guess what? You're not going to step inside the range and do what you think you're going to do. Because geographically, the mainland, Shuai Jiao is the folk wrestling. Most of these northern methods have Shuai Jiao in their skill set, which is going to come.
Yeah, they've been influenced.
Exactly. So, in implementing both approaches has really been more of a complete experience for my body and people in my circle as far as doing, Tongbei, doing Xingyi, Bagua, those kind of things. Cultivation and other things are movement and the sports development, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. Well, look, there is something to be said that people can take that idea of health and movement and then apply it to completely nonsensical stuff and say, yes, but it's all about this aspect. So there is that aspect, but what we're talking about here is genuine practices. And within, for example, in Xingyi, for example, with my Xingyi trend, we have a whole set of, we have a large corpus of Neigong and other things which are about movement, because there were aspects of range of motion and type of motion that are somewhat neglected if you're just doing the core techniques, and these are there to enhance that,
Yes.
but also expand on certain aspects of movement that you might not do to that extreme, just to keep you mobile. Mobility is an
Yes.
important thing, as you said. So yeah, I mean, I agree with it. And as you get older, like I picked up an injury more recently that I'm still going through, and when
Mm.
I went to check it out, the doctor was like, "Oh, the one muscle on this side is so overly developed that the countering muscle is out of balance, and this is why you're getting these injuries." And I'm like, nah, this is nonsense. I do martial arts every single day, all my life. Exactly. He said we don't have these kind of problems with lay people. We only get these kind of problems with people that are professional
Wow.
sportsmen or that are, and that's
Interesting.
exactly the truth. And it kind of made me think a little bit deeper about some of the stuff that you'll get these people criticizing old people in the park doing like tai chi or calisthenics, to that, like Chinese traditional calisthenics, saying, "Oh, but this stuff is useless for fighting." And I'm looking at them and like, yeah, but when you go to the West, most people this age, they're chair bound, they can barely
Very foolish.
move their
Very
feet.
foolish.
And here you've got these old people, at least they're still moving in this old age. So I'm not trying to
Very
say that that's the
foolish.
only focus, but don't overlook that. That's really an important part. It's
Yes.
something we should be promoting.
Having things in proper perspective. That's very
Yeah.
foolish. Those old people are moving, they're active, and at that age it's about quality of life. Your fight is the quality of life.
Yeah.
And for the most part, they're not going to be a normal a normal old bird. I've seen a couple of old birds actually defend themselves. But in that sense,
Yeah, yeah.
you've developed yourself as a person. Your whole being is on another level as far as the kind of things you even get into. At that age, it's about quality of life. Sun Lutang used to say some things to that level of it's a good thing to live a long time and get old, then die suddenly. Like not get sick
Yeah.
first and waste away in order to leave this world. And when
And
it comes
suffer.
down, yes, and when it comes down to that, you're of a certain age, you push at 90, your brain is sharp, you still train. The sword you train with is actually kind of heavy. I believe
Mm.
I believe those weapon works, and a lot of these things are cortex training. I think they have an effect on
Yes.
blocking out Alzheimer's and different things because he never forgot those movements. They're in him for the duration. He's independent. He goes hiking.
Very true.
He goes to the market. He doesn't need anybody to come over and wipe his ass for him or her.
Exactly.
Dignity's in place. You live a long time, and then when it's time to leave, you just leave. I think that's
Well,
a
that's
win in my
exactly
book.
it. That's exact. You said something about Alzheimer's, which is really important, like keeping the brain active. And that's the other
Yes.
thing people don't realize about the social nature of a lot of these Chinese martial arts, especially as you get older. We see this
Yes.
in the West where people become old and then they become frail, firstly out of a physical, they're physically declining. And also
Yes.
because they don't have a culture of movement, so they decline physically first usually. And then they get stuffed into some care facility. Okay, and
Yes.
when they're getting stuffed into some care facility, they're losing the mental side of their life. It's not
Yes.
they're just basically existing. Whereas if
Yes.
they're like you and I, we take care of ourselves. We got to go out. We got to go. You got things to do. You're keeping your brain active. But then there's the third part, which is really important, which is the social part of things, and that
Yes.
social interaction. You can be an old person here and live relatively. I mean, you could have no children, let's just say, for example, but you're living on
Yeah.
your own and you're living a somewhat secluded life. But the mornings you're getting up and you're going and getting together in a square or a park, and you're doing something
Yes.
together with other old people, and that social act thing, improves your life and improves your mental state, and it makes you live longer. All of those things are connected. The second the
100%.
brain stops to work, the body stops to work, and you're finding nothing valuable and meaningful to do, you're going to die pretty quickly. It's going to end. So
This is a good thing that we're talking about here. This is very relevant. We talk about, do things work, quote unquote, or not? And this is synonymous with anything where you find your thing, your calling in life. For example, my granddad being rest well, being an accomplished musician. He's done a lot of things in the industry. worked with a lot of people, movie scores, you name it, a composer. He had his colleagues
Wow.
and comrades in that all his life. He had the instrument of choice that he played, the trumpet, which he played till the end.
Wow.
Martial arts training, it covers so many aspects of the human diaspora that people may or may not realize. Something, we talk about, for example, Taolu being useless or not. There is competition, which is good. There is contact, which is necessary, and it usually involves another person or some object you're striking. But what about that time when like people that say I'm bored? I can't remember the last time I was actually bored. I have too many things that I can source.
Yeah, I don't have time to be bored.
Yeah, I can immediately create a sanctuary for myself and go into my own bag I don't need another person. I don't need equipment. I have a thing where I can work on, something I can just work on with myself. And this is very important for human beings, to find a thing for yourself. There's one thing about competing, which is good. There's another thing about beating yourself, beating boredom, having something that you can actually turn to and just work on yourself. Whether it's martial arts, whether it's playing an instrument, which comes along with colleagues and friends, which is by far the best part of the experience, is the friends you make. The lifetime friends you make is the best part of most of it. And having something that is an extension of yourself that you can work on and cultivate, practice, and play with, whether it's a harmonica or it's baji chuan. You know what I mean?
Agree.
And that keeps that kind of keeps you from slipping into oblivion as time goes on. That's what you're talking about.
Exactly. Well, let's get into a little bit about your background. What got you into the martial arts? What did you start with? What was your journey?
Wow. Well, I'm from the Bronx, New York, a place where people fight a lot. My family's pretty well known in the community that we came up in, pretty well known, pretty legendary for just helping people and being there longer than everyone else. My dad and my granddad were both legendary fighters, toughest guys in the entire neighborhood, and for the sake of helping people, people getting robbed, they'll come out of nowhere and help someone, or just known as, hey, that's the guy right there. Taught a lot of guys who couldn't fight how to fight, take care of themselves. I looked up to my dad and my granddad. These guys got rid of the resident gang that was there, got back to back and fought all those guys. And the funny story everyone has is my granddad's hat never came off. So I grew up, So I grew up, basically these guys were my first superheroes. Dad was a great guy, great fighter, and just a guy everybody looked to. You see him in the buildings, oh, I'm okay. There's Vic. Always had a kind word, a word of wisdom, was involved with the kids. And I grew up, idolizing those guys. So fighting physically kind of came naturally to me. My first art was Taekwondo at age 8. I wanted to do that, had that whole thing, watching movies, watching Bruce, of course. I know it sounds redundant and the haters will have to indulge it, but Bruce was a huge influence, and just the idea of heroes.
Me too.
Because for my family, I always saw my family, wow, they're tough, but they're the good guys. So I was raised with that idea that the good guys should be tough and strong enough and not victims. So I grew up with that kind of hero aspect. Martial arts is a big thing here in New York. Fighting in general, whether it's boxing or sports, is a big thing here in New York. Knowing how to handle yourself and not be bullied or anything like that. It's part of the culture, really. So, here movies and stuff were ready, available right on the corner. So you're watching the wuxia films. You're watching not only the fighting, but the lessons of the characters and what they were going through and what they were fighting for. And that kind of resonated with what I was raised with. So other than that, it's all a big accident. I couldn't tell you how it happened. I started in Taekwondo at age 8, excelled in that pretty rapidly. It wasn't too much of a challenge at that time. Flexibility, what have you, was something that was kind of easy to me. I had been learning my dad's 52 hand block style pretty much since I could throw my hands. So I had an idea of fighting. Went from Taekwondo from 8 into my early teens, short break, then into so-called Kungfu Sansu, and then ended up in my 20s dealing with Muay Thai. I got pretty good
Was
at
that
Muay
Kung Fu
Thai.
Sansu in New York as well?
Yeah,
Was Kung Fu
yeah,
Sansu? Oh, okay.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I
That's
think
what.
you're you're probably the third or the fourth person that I've had on the podcast that did Kung Fu Sansu in one form or the other throughout their life. One of them being Tim Cartmel, famously. He did Kung Fu
Nice,
Sansu.
nice. Yeah,
I had Daniele Bolelli as well, who's a friend of Cartmel's, and they know each other because of Kung Fu Sansu.
nice.
And I can't recall if there was another one, but yeah, it's interesting to see. But they're on the west coast, and you're all the way on the east coast. So it seems to have been quite a well spread system in the States.
Yeah, this guy was from the Bay Area. This guy, what's his name? Gary. And I was only there for a spitball of time, like a
Okay.
speck of time. But that way, I look at that as I looked at that for a long time as my first introduction into Kung Fu, pretty much.
Mm,
You
good.
know, not spending much time there, wanting to compete, having that whole bug in me. I want the belts. I want the prestige. I
Right.
love the spirit of Muay Thai and saw one too many Muay Thai movies and loved it and got
Right.
into that. Spent some time out west, got into that and got to learn from Saksan Jinjira and a couple of his students out there. They had a place called the Muay Thai Academy of America out in North Hollywood and got a nice burn there. Met another guy who was a so-called ninjutsu practitioner that beat me up pretty good.
Oh,
So I ended
okay.
up,
Interesting.
some offshoot, eclectic, weird thing coined as so-called Chinese ninjutsu. And he beat
Okay.
me up.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And he beat me up, and I ended up spending some time with him in that training, and through that is where I really got my first taste of like Xingyi and Bagua, and that's when I started really, in my mid and later 20s, started really getting heavy into that, and that was a really
Good. Yeah.
interesting time for me. I was working as a bouncer and a doorman and getting into a lot of violence and seeing what things were effective, and it was a very interesting time. But then it was a time where I was still with that ninjutsu guy, and I was dabbling with
Okay.
my Xingyi and Bagua and a lot of interesting concepts of techniques and thousands of different kicks. And at the time, it was impressive. Then you come to be more educated. You say, oh, well, too many is not a good thing. And that whole
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
meeting my classmates later on, and they're like, oh, wow, what are you doing, dude? I can't touch you. So it's been interesting. So I'd say that's been my trajectory. And
Yeah.
ended up in Xingyi and Bagua for the duration, for life. Dabbled in Tongbei years ago before I actually had a Tongbei teacher. And other than that, being a fan of the whole thing, just having a lot of friends from different things, boxing friends, wrestling friends, sea-lot friends, and having a lot of people around me where I had at least an introduction or orientation into a lot of different things, which I think is interesting about the practitioners here in the States when we talk about, access to things. A lot of us do Chinese martial arts because we like it, not necessarily because we're ignorant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's a big difference. Say someone who's, in China has never left China. And before a certain time, there wasn't a lot of outside practices there where they may have
Right.
never had a boxing friend or a wrestling friend to show them, hey, this is what you can expect, and play around and slap each other around, that kind of thing. But that's kind of
Well,
my
I mean,
background.
the same happened with me, especially as a youngster, because of the influence, like you say, of Bruce Lee. I always wanted to do Chinese martial arts, but it wasn't available.
Yeah, yeah,
So we look for it, you know? Yeah.
exactly. I had that stretch in Muay Thai. I was ready to compete. I was. We used to have little tournaments against the Jet Center, any of the Jets people, which
Oh,
was
okay.
interesting.
Wow.
And then one time, a more advanced student came back, and he was pretty messed up, got in some violence, and I asked the crew, I said, well, what methods will we use when the situation calls for that? You get jumped by a lot of people, and I'm just kickboxing everybody. And people pull out weapons. What do I do? And he said, run. I said, that's a
Run.
wise answer. But what if I'm with my mom?
Yeah.
What if I'm with my wife? What can I do? And that's when I kind of even got more of a distinction between sport and defense, even though a lot of people say self-defense is nonsense. I highly disagree. And that was where I kind of returned to really looking at things where, you know, I can do this in certain scenarios, I can implement it, and also I can do this for a long time. Deadening out the nerves in your shins is quite impressive, but, you know, in the long run, you know, what will you have? There was some pretty hardcore practices in that so-called ninjutsu system, you know, hitting my forearms on concrete and things of that nature that I knew in the long haul, that's not going to be good. Not going to be good for me. And I remember the teacher telling me, hey, you know, you don't have 10 years to get good. You have to be a fighter now. And lo and behold, 10 years passed by rather quickly. And there we were, still healthy. A lot of my classmates there, older, not very physically capable. And it's just been a very interesting reveal in that sense.
Right. Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, you can always take things to extremes, you know, and that'll be damaging in the long run. So the idea could be good. You know, you should do some conditioning. You need to have some conditioning. Otherwise, you're going to be highly surprised when you actually make contact with something harder than you're used to. So some conditioning is good, but you can take it to the extreme where it becomes counterproductive. You know, in the short term, it might seem very productive. In the long term, it's counterproductive. So absolutely.
You know, and then I found Xingyi, and, you know, I wanted to complete something. I didn't want to be a cherry picker all my life.
Where did you start doing Xingyi there? Where did you start doing it there?
I started doing Xingyi when I was out in Los Angeles, and I was a student of James McNeil.
Oh, okay, yeah. So he's one of the guys that I think he trained a little bit in Taiwan. He was one of the first that early group of people, I think.
Yep.
I think he mentions his teacher is either Xu Hongji or
Xu Hongji is the teacher he really adhered to was a Xu Hongji. That's who he really adhered to, and he taught me a lot, and that's I became an instructor under him around
interesting
around 1999. Became a young, inexperienced coach instructor under Jim McNeil, and that was an interesting experience. His Xingyi was certainly interesting, and gave me a foundation for what I'm doing today. I met my current teacher, Li Tailiang, Professor Li Tailiang, years later, not too many years later, around 2003. That's when I met him, and he invited me into the branch, and I found what he had to offer much enlightening and much more what I was looking for. But I won't take anything away from Teacher McNeil. He was very honest, very tough guy, and taught me a lot of interesting things.
Good. I mean, everything helps, right? I mean, there's no such thing as bad information if you know the difference between good and bad. Then it's just experience, right?
Yes,
so
I can sit here.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You can look back on a bad experience or something that you were ignorant of at that time. I'm not saying this is the case, but I'm using it as an analogy. You can take the good and the bad out of any situation and kind of think, well, what if I never had the bad or never learned the bad? But the reality is the fact that you know better, what's better or worse, means that you've actually grown because of the bad. If you get what I'm saying.
Yes,
you know,
I do. Yeah. And I could sit and say, oh, what was better or what was less, and you know, I found these type of holes and missing answers or whatever.
Exactly.
And that certainly was a fact to a certain degree. However, I also found later on in finding more in-depth, so-called more accurate methods, that certain things that were told to me in that training with Teacher McNeil resonated again later. I said, oh, wow. I remember he used to say that, and now I know what that means exactly. So, you know, that's kind of my moniker across the board. I don't think anything is useless. I think this idea of useless things is kind of foolish. Everything is useless in the right context, in the right scenario.
Well, you wouldn't know what's useful again without experiencing useless, right? So
yeah, totally.
You know.
So I like to think that our overall mindset is arriving at a more informed. I think we're heading in a good direction. I mean, I remember a time when people could say, Taekwondo, blah, 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 if you step inside the range and this and that, blah, blah, blah. But hey, we watch combat fighting. People get kicked out every day. If you want to kick well, Taekwondo people are not a bad choice to talk to. Why? Because they fucking kick very well.
Right.
So nothing is useless under the sun. That's my idea with everything. Nothing is useless. You know?
Yeah, I agree. So how did you, I mean, Li Tailiang's all the way on the other side of the States though, right?
Yes, he is. But me, I'm from New York. So I found him here, but I didn't get a chance to check in with him. It's kind of a colorful story. I was out in California. I had a ill spouse at the time who was kind of not doing too well. And that led me to spend quite a bit of time out there. She was fighting breast cancer, and we were kind of dealing with the thing there. And it was kind of tough. I had kind of hit a roadblock in my previous training. Took a couple of students. They were asking questions I couldn't answer at the time and couldn't get those questions. Lo and behold, when I first graduated, for lack of a better term, as a Xingyi coach, I was here in New York, Chinatown. And I was at my favorite spot, one of these places. They used to be BLT, which is a martial arts supply store in Chinatown. You go there to get all your videos and your, low quality folding knives or what have you. So I went there and I saw a video series, yellow boxes with a guy in red pajamas. So I said, hey, of course, now we know it's a Tongzhuang, whatever, but never mind. So I said, hey, give me all those right there. Give me the ones with the guy in the red Tongzhuang. And went home and looked at those, and I was like, whoa, of course, they were Xingyi videos. I'm like, wow, he's doing it totally different. Like, he's doing the same, but something's different about it. And I was puzzled, and I liked the way he was doing it. And because I was cross-referencing as a young teacher just to see what's out there, see what am I going to make my own personalized approach be? What is the whole diaspora of Xingyi? What's out there? And I remember watching him and his particular method that really resonated with me. And never really knew who he was at the time. And this was Master Li at the time.
Right.
And then the old Kungfu Qigong magazine came out. They came out with a police issue of people that were involved in law enforcement. They had the guy Alexander Tao. He had another JKD kind of system. He had the one swollen big iron fist on one side.
I can't remember that issue because I used to buy those issues every month back in the day. I remember that issue. Didn't he call his system? Yeah, he called it Jingquan Dao, which is police fist, the way of the police fist, basically.
Absolutely. So it was him. It was Master Li Tailiang, and the third guy was the Baji guy, Tony Chen.
I remember the issue. Yeah.
So it was those three guys, and that issue kind of gave a background on who Li Tailiang was, and the background, all these things I didn't know. Like, oh wow! It just kind of I got an idea of the different, more of a stronger idea of the different dimensions of the whole Xingyi diaspora, from Shanxi, Hebei, Henan, and what have you. And I found it very interesting. And his involvement in law enforcement. I said, oh, wow, it must be some no-nonsense stuff. And and then, different schools having bigger or smaller frames and all these different unique details and, whatever resonated with me personally. And that's when I realized who he was and said, oh, wow, that's the differences I'm seeing. And lo and behold, fast forward into the future, because I was in New York at that time. My dad had passed away, so I was there looking after family and couldn't really do much while I was there. My wife ended up getting sick again, and she was out in California working in the movie industry, being a producer and these kind of things. And I returned. And during our whole experience and our struggle, lo and behold, in those magazines, they used to have a current events section. We see tournaments that were coming up, different seminars, different workshops. And in the back, who do I see? Li Tailiang. And where is the workshop? Out in Los Angeles County, more towards San Diego. And
Nice.
it was a 5-day, 5-element Wuxing Tran symposium. 5 days,
Very cool.
each one all day. And I was like, oh, wow, there's the guy. That's him. There's the guy. I said, I am going to that. At that time, I hadn't really been involved in anything outside of my own stuff, being at home, struggling with family and what have you. So I made the point that I am going to this thing if it kills me. And thanks to my now senior brother, Forrest Chang, he answered all my questions. I had a lot of questions leading up to it. He was just so gracious, and I'm a stranger. And he was just so gracious in helping me out, answering questions. And the day came, and I went down to the thing and met Master Li, and man, he just blew my mind with everything. It just really resonated for me. I even ended up having a couple of classmates from my previous Xingyi group. And I was like, wow, a guy named Al Lam, another guy, Vince Brown. So we were all co-classmates in the same thing. We find ourselves in the same place. So I ended up meeting Master Li. Yeah, I ended up meeting Master Li, and he was a nice guy. And he even praised, at that point, I was a young Hebei instructor. And he even praised my Hebei. He said, that's good stuff. And he was just very accommodating and open. Yeah, positive, open-minded about everything. And that really grabbed me. He had not a criticism for anyone or anything. And got into these methods. A lot of these informations are not easy to come by. And it was just a very interesting group. I remember he and I having a moment. His wife's a Western doctor. My wife having cancer. We were just bonding. Right. And I remember meeting him. And for me, his method resonated. And it kind of really ended up the method I really wanted to do. And I remember like, wow, I'm here in California. I can't go back to New York. Wow. And I was kind of depressed a little bit. Filled in the answers where I could, worked on as much as I could work on, kind of incorporated a lot of those methods into my then current method. Forrest answered a lot of questions, shared a lot of reference material, and was really, really gracious without barely knowing me, which meant a lot to me. He provided me with a lot of reference material to study on my own and learn what I would learn. And at some point, I reached the point where I was like, this is the particular method for me. Even though I must say the springboard I got from Teacher McNeil allowed me to really absorb things and really understand what I was looking at. So shout out to Teacher McNeil. He's a somewhat colorful character for a lot of reasons, but whatever. Never mind. There are great things to be gained wherever you're at. It just depends on which way you turn your head and how open-minded you are.
I agree.
When I look back at it, like, wow, it's easier to say, oh, well, he didn't know this, he didn't know that, he couldn't answer this. But there were so many seeds that he planted that I was like, wow, this is what he was saying. And now I see it now today.
Over here.
He never lied. He said, this is how I was taught. And I found that to be true. And so I value my experience with him indefinitely. So there I am. I found the teacher for me. I found the method for me, and there I am. So I'm practicing on my own with my previous experience, which was pretty substantial and help from Forrest. And I eventually kind of transitioned all the way over, and I was like, wow, but I'm not really a part of that circle. I can't really promote, these kind of things. I'm not really a student. Never mind. I called Master Li a lot, asked him a lot of questions. And at this point, I'm going really hard with my wife, my home life. It's making it very difficult for me to get out and travel and get more things for myself. So I was kind of in a self-research scenario for a very, very long time. And I'm working at this. I'm working at this boutique hotel / nightclub in West Hollywood called the Hollywood Standard Hotel on a legendary street called Sunset Boulevard in West Hollywood. It's a historic. Nice. I've heard. Yes, it's a legendary strip of bars and clubs and just a total nightmare. So I'm getting into physical fights, like literally 3 fights every week. just either separating things or getting involved and just seeing so much violence and what happens with humans with alcohol and nighttime and just us just being our own cruel selves. So I learned a lot in that environment. So it was really a race for me to make sure I came home safe every day because I have my family depending on me. I can't let anything happen to me. So I learned a lot from being hands-on with that occupationally. And I had a few students from that job, and my first series student from right here in the Bronx followed me out to California. So it was he and I both working on this strip as the so-called as the so-called Kung Fu guys in a hotbed of MMA and jiu-jitsu guys. The guy that brought me on in that job is an MMA fighter, Jason Haidt, Canadian. He's back in Canada right now, but we had worked somewhere else and threw a lot of knuckles together, and he put me on and really helped me out. And you know, of course, all his buddies were over at Hickson's place or another guy, Sean something from Henzo's group. So it was interesting being the only Kung Fu guy in the midst of MMA guys in a violent scenario where we're getting into all these things. We're in crowded bars, and you know, I'm actually doing quite all right. And you know, people are learning a lesson of a rear naked choke on a bar floor in the dark. Not a good idea. I can tell you so many stories that it would spin your head around. I have a couple of these jiu-jitsu guys saying, hey, show me a couple of things, you know, from the scrimmage, like before it started. You know what I mean? Like, yes. And I'm actually the security supervisor at this time. So I'm actually the leader. So I have to tell people, hey, stay off the damn floor, get the people up and outside the door. You know what I mean? So many scenarios. Dead bodies in hotel rooms, guns, Armenian mafia, you name it. I mean, you name it. Movie guys, stunt guys, celebrity. This was a place where everybody wanted to be. From Hugh Hefner, it was a place where everybody. It was a celebrity place. Hugh Hefner would come in, and I remember the time Rowdy Piper pulled a knife on a guy inside. He's like, I'm an old judo master. I'll cut you. I don't fight. This guy, Shuto guy, Gino, was messing with him all night. I could spin your head around with stories.
Those are interesting, man. You should write that stuff up, man. You should write that into a memoir.
Oh my God, Byron. Just that experience alone as a Kung Fu man, I mean, really, you got something there. So anyway, getting back on track, Master Li posted this advertisement for a cultural exchange study tour, the first of its kind, where people can go to Taegu County and learn with his family and do a cultural exchange, this kind of thing. And that blew my mind because you got to remember, I haven't really had a chance to venture out and get more education martially or do things. I've kind of been stuck and just kind of learning hands-on occupationally. And, you know, I took my experiences. I competed in Muay Thai. I took all those things and just kind of, you know, did that. So I said, I'm going to this thing. I planned this thing for about 9 months, told my job, hey, 9-10 months from now, I'm leaving for a month. Can I go?
Right.
Will you secure my job? They said yes. They said yes. They said yes. No problem. I kept asking them that. And my late wife, she was like, you have to go. You have to do this. You have to get something for you. I'll be fine. And which was a struggle for me. And I planned this thing for 10 months. About a month before leaving, my job cuts my pay in half without warning.
Oh, no.
So that changed the whole, and I had to pay the rest of my tuition. So I was like, oh man, I can't go for the whole month. I need to go for the 2-week phase. And Master Lee's like, we already got the ticket. Can't change. So I'm like, what am I going to do now? So I end up calling a friend of mine, a Mr. Ice-T.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Nice.
I told you we don't have enough hours for this interview, brother. So you know, I knew Ice for a while. Ice is a big martial arts fan. He used to dabble in
I kind of heard about that. I heard about that before.
Yeah. He used to dabble in Kung Fu. when he was young, but then he got hit by a car and broke his pelvis. So that was the end of him doing stuff, according to him. And we used to exchange movies and stuff like that.
Interesting story. I got hit by a car preparing for a martial arts competition when I was 25. So I'd go running in the morning. Right. And some dude came around the corner and he had his kid on his lap and he wasn't looking at the road and he just plowed right into me and my teammate. But here's the funny thing.
Did you still compete? You did.
Yeah, I still competed. I mean, he hit us. He hit us, but his car was more broken than we were.
see, we are kindred spirits, brother. I took the 65-mile-an-hour hit off of an Italian Vespa, and then went to compete in Shuai Jiao 3 weeks later.
Exactly. I got hit. I got hit by this car, and I just remember, I smashed his windscreen with my arm, smashed his windscreen. He hit me from behind. My butt broke his light and dented his fender, and then I went up and my arm smashed his windscreen. My elbow took the mirror off the side of his car. But I got up and I was like, okay, I don't think anything's broken. I'm okay. My teammate went for a bit of a fly. I went to go check him out. He had some burns. So I was more worried about him than myself because he went flying, right? He went really flying. And we went to the hospital. I was more worried about him. I had forgotten that I actually got hit. I just thought, it just kind of passed by me. You don't realize in the moment, you know what I mean? And only afterwards when I realized what was going on. But I was so worried about him. And we took him to the hospital. Nothing. I mean, they scanned him, they x-rayed him, nothing. He just had some scratches and a little bit of sprain here and there, a bit of whiplash. That's about it, And I remember going home. Yeah, I go home and I'm sitting down and I'm like, I must have been training too hard these days. My ass is stiff. And meanwhile, I go to the mirror. I look at my ass in the mirror and it's purple. And I'm like, oh shit. Okay, so I got hit a little bit harder than it's worse than I thought. Yeah. No, I know I got hit, but I thought it was nothing, and you didn't realize the extent of it. Yeah. That's
a crazy sidebar really quick. See, that's a crazy sidebar when we talk about what works. Same thing for me. I end up T-boning a car at 65 miles an hour and flying 15 feet, somersaulting, and landing flat on my back.
Shit.
My brain is telling me, get up. You're going to get run over. Get up. I pop up. I feel my face. My face shield's completely gone. My lips are the size of balloons. And I stand up, and the lady screams, ah! Because she was sure she killed me. And I get up. The front of the Vespa is dust, confetti, disappeared.
Oh, no.
It was, I got hit with Mjolnir. Like I got hit by my bare body. My head almost came off. But at the last minute,
Jesus.
I went soft and loose, like Taiji Cotton Man. If I would have tightened up, I would have broken many pieces. So getting up from that with just a scrape, a mild concussion, and a little bit of memory loss was amazing. So when we say do things work, I mean, hey, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
Really? They work in many different ways. And I went and competed. And I went and competed 3 weeks later in the Shuai Jiao competition.
I competed. I was back at training, I think 3 days later. No problem. My ass was still blue. My elbow still hurt, but nothing serious.
Right. So back on track.
You used iced tea.
I called Ice. He said, "You going where? You what?" And he said, "Absolutely." So he flipped the bill for the rest of the time, and that's how I made it my first time. I said, I'm going to just go and learn all I can for myself, do all I can, because I'm usually in a situation where this is it. I won't get a chance to come back because I've got these things going on in my life. So I'm always writing everything down, every single method, getting all I can.
Yeah.
3 days before leaving, I get a call from my Dai Sishong, Mark Lee. And he asked me, he says, he tells me that his father is asking me would I be interested in becoming his official Tudi.
Wow.
And I was like, wow. He said, this way the trip will be of more relevance. The training will be harder than it would usually be. You'll meet more people, but you'll have more responsibility. And I was like, I was choked up. I was like, wow. I was like, what I had been through, I was completely choked up. I was like, yes, and yes, I was honored. Like, wow, that totally changed the whole complexion of how and why I'd be going there. Completely. It changed, the whole scenario changed, and that blew my mind. And that was my interaction. I went there and I met my martial uncle, Master Yang Fansong, and that first experience in Taigu County, Sanchi is, we may not even have enough time for that. That was the first of several of my times there, and the rest is history. My aptitude in my previous training had allowed me to advance very quickly. It was very interesting cultural exchange for them and for me. So it was a very, very, very intimate interaction with them. And that's kind of how I became. And so when I got there, of course, Master Li was already there. He's like, hey, wait a minute, you were just over here. And he's at the end of the escalator in Beijing airport. He gets there and collects us. And, you know, me and my classmate, Frank Wong, Ben Platt, and another young kid from out here in New Jersey. And Master Li takes me there and takes me to his in-laws home in Beijing, I think out in Qinghe, in that area. Okay, and he gives me my Baishu ceremony. Me, him, and Uncle Yang's son, Yang Yu. And that's when he gave me my Baishu and everything. We were on our way in a car to Sanxi. And interesting, man, just interesting. But
you
that's
drove
how
to Shanxi, right?
We drove because there was something, I don't remember, there was something going on with the train at that time or something. And we drove.
What year was this?
This was 2004. Do you remember anything going on? It was
you know what it might have been? It might have been after the SARS outbreak. Things kind of shut down.
There was some reason why we drove from Beijing to Shanxi. It was brutal.
It could have been the SARS outbreak. I was in Guangzhou. I was in Guangzhou in December of 2003 when SARS was just breaking out there, and nobody knew about it. As a matter of fact,
it was definitely during the SARS outbreak, for sure. Now that you say that, that was definitely going on when I was there. I didn't know that that's why we were driving, but later on when I returned to China, later on in the future when I returned to China and I was taking the trains, then I understood, like, okay, this is why. Taking an 11-hour train trip, from Beijing to Dongbei. Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Oh, brutal. Man.
So you went out to Shanxi. I mean, I know that Li Tailiang and the group that his Xingyi, etc. that comes from. Yeah. It's kind of a combination of Shanxi Xingyi and the Xinyi Liuhe of the Dai family. There's a mix up. It's kind of combined, right?
Yes. Which is also considered Sanxi Xinyi, but Xinyi and not Xinyi, not Xinyi and not Xingyi, as we both know. Yeah, it's an amalgamated method of those two. Basically, that system is Master Li's personal experience of all the things he learned. He learned both through family, coming up under Che style Xingyi, his instructor being his father, Li Shuchuan, who was also, a student of Shuai Quan and those guys. And I think Master Li also, as a young kid, learned from Shuai Quan. Shuai Quan, learning, the whole thing. And also his Dai style teacher, of course, being Grandmaster Wang Yinghai, and also Zhao Sorong, which is another guy who's kind of prominent. He's got some activity going on in Japan, and he's got another student I won't mention that's promoting that. But so through those things, it is an amalgam of Che Xingyi and Dai Xingyi.
Right.
Yeah, and I got to meet Grandmaster Wang. He taught me some Neigong and let me beat on him a couple of parts of his body with all my might. I was like, oh my God, what's this old guy made of? And
isn't it funny? I've had that a couple of times too. People don't realize it until you actually do it. It's fucking surreal. Right. It's
right.
Like this old dude who's old. I mean, he's at that point he might have been older than your older
He's
than your own
old.
grandpa, and he's like, "Here,
Yes.
smash my arm as hard as you want to," and I'm like, "I'm gonna
I
kill this
hammer,
old man."
I hammer fisted this guy in his back where his lungs were hard
Yeah,
and nothing
yeah.
and nothing.
I had
And
one.
when I first,
I had.
yeah, when I
Yeah,
go
yeah.
ahead, go ahead.
I had it like the same thing, like smash the forearm. I'm like, cool, but I got pretty hard forearms. Smash his forearm. He just looked at me many times. He's no problem. And then I'm like, yeah, but forearms are forearms. And he's like, all right, smash me in the stomach as hard as you want to. And I was like, I'm gonna kill this old man. He said, no, you're not. Just hit me as hard as you want to. I'm like, are you sure? Yeah. Whack. And he's just looking at me. And this is like, okay, do it again. Whack.
Right.
Do it again.
So again,
whack.
So again,
Cool.
we say, is it working?
Yeah.
Is it working? Which way do you mean? Because it's working for him. He's an old bird. He's an old bird. He's not a paper tiger. I think it worked for him.
Yeah, exactly. So carry on. Yeah. You were whacking him on his back.
Yeah. So found myself on the couch on the other end with the two elders in the middle, and Master Li telling me, "Hey, you're family now. You gotta have to work extra hard, and keep us alive. Make sure we, I was like, wow, pretty choked up.
Nice.
And but that was the breast of that, and seeing Master Li's father and Grandmaster Wang as good friends. That's one thing I saw was a lot of people that were friends with each other there. I was like, oh wow. So it was very interesting to me. One thing that stands out, the Xingyi Dao system being an amalgam of Dai style and Che style. And me looking at that as possibly, innovation of my teacher. But when I spoke to Uncle Yang Fansung, I asked him, well, where did you pick up Dai style from? He said, from my teacher. So Wu Lianfu, I guess, transmitted some Dai style to him too, because I thought maybe that Uncle Yang was also a student of Grandmaster Wang, but he wasn't. So very interesting, the cross-pollination there. I never quite got my finger on it totally, but very interesting.
I'm sure it is more common than we think, specifically in Taigu with the older generations.
Yes, because there's a lot of migration and cross-pollination between Qi County and Taigu County. They both sound Qi. Right. So it's very interesting. And the idea of it being an amalgam is the old and the new benefiting each other. Che style for Dai style, of course, in that thought school, more in-depth methods in terms of power cultivation. Che style more in terms of practical approaches to usage and combat.
Technique,
more practical uses of combat. Santi being more of a, more similar to a boxing or free fighting stance than, let's say, Gongbu and Dai style.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
and then also in the range, he was dealing with close range and then zero range. So do
you want to? Maybe I could. Yeah, but I wanted to say something while before I forget. When you mentioned the Santi and Gongbu, it's really interesting. Like I spent, my wife's from Inner Mongolia, and in Inner Mongolia, her brother himself being a specific style of mantis that was transmitted in Inner Mongolia, and it's really amazing. It only lives there really now. It's only exists, but it comes from Shanxi anyway. And in their system, they don't call. Of course, they don't have Santi. But what they call their posture that looks like Santi Shi in terms of the leg orientation and the weight distribution, they call it Zhong Gongbu, middle Gongbu.
Oh wow! So that's interesting.
It's really interesting, right? Because it makes sense. Instead of taking the weight to the front, you move it more to the middle, and that makes a logical connection between the evolution, doesn't it?
Man, so. you just said a mouthful. That's a theory I've had. Everybody has their own individual lore, as far as their method and who did what and this and that. But that was something that I kind of thought is probably what happened. And this is a great thing we brought up. There's a lore of it being Shuai Jiao who actually did a lot of tinkering with the method.
Right.
that he got from his teacher Li Lao No.
Right.
Him doing a lot of tinkering while the teacher's away doing caravan security, whatever the business they had going on at the time, and him also studying with Dai Wensheng, allegedly directly. So you look at Santi and you say, well, wow, the knee is over the toe, the lead knee, and you say, well, okay, what happens if you do Dantian rotation and you miss? You might be a little slow to reset, but if you add banbu, if you just add banbu afterward, a half step.
Yeah, following a gunbu, a following step. Yeah.
If you do a half step, a follow step out of the gongbu or hubu as we call it, what position
you can fire immediately thereafter. You can fire straight after. Yeah.
And that position is Santi. That's simple. That position is Santi. That's simple. So a lot of people would say that Dai Xinyi Liuhe is almost a completely different method from, the Santi Bei Xingyi. And it's really, really not. It's so much more similar than people really realize. You just can't see it outright. Right. And I think that's a big thing about Xingyi. People say Xingyi is simple. I think it's made diabolically so that onlookers will say, oh, that's nothing. That's just, but it's really not as simple as it looks. There's a lot of things there that you don't see outright. And I think people did that. You don't see it. I think it's deliberately like that to throw people off. So that's maybe a story for another time, but I found so many ways that the two connect right into each other. And that's an interesting thing about what that mantis method did. And then this adjustment, you say gongbu / hubu, and you add that follow step, and there you have Santi all of a sudden. Just that easy, I think. An immediate reset or recocking of the trigger, so to speak.
I mean, we don't realize how naturally a lot of these things evolved in a logical fashion. Totally. I've even found this, and I don't know if you've watched any of the Shuai Jiao history videos that I've been making. Just reading the
I missed that. You got to direct me to that. That's my thing.
I'll send them to you. I'm busy working on the third and the fourth parts now. It was supposed to be 3 parts, but the third part might be too long that I'll split it into 4. In any case, what's interesting is how simplistically we look at things today, and then we set that as that's the way things are. Like, for example, and this is relevant in the Shuai Jiao aspect, but also in this thing that we're talking about here.
I didn't get around to my Shuai Jiao thing. We'll get to that. Go ahead.
We'll get into that. But they'll say, like, you I'm sure you've heard of it, the different styles of Shuai Jiao. There's the Beijing style, the Baoding style, and the Tianjin style. And then if you read monikers and little descriptions about the differences in the style, they'll chalk it up to different styles being created as styles, if you get what I'm saying, right? Like
yes.
This created here because they focused on X, Y, and Z, and this was created here and that's just simply not true. That's not true. It's the environment and experiences that shaped the practice. It's not just, it didn't come out of thin air. Like,
oh man, you said a mouthful. Indeed.
For example, why are the and I get into this, but why are the Mongolians so good at wrestling? Like, why? Not only is it part of their culture. I mean, that could be a very simplistic point of view. Well, it's part of their culture, so they're good at wrestling. Yeah, but why is it part of their culture? I mean, this is there's a long process of why it gets to that point, and it comes down to being herders. It gets down to being nomadic herders. When your entire life, if you've been to the grasslands of Inner Mongolia, and especially if it's, when it's the dead of winter, you ain't going to see a hell of a lot, but in summer, if you take a look, it's just grass. You know what I mean? And the last time I checked, humans can't eat grass. If you're gonna survive out in the grassland, your entire existence is dependent on your animals surviving.
Livestock,
and your animals are one thing in terms of your sheep and what other, because different tribes in different areas had slightly different animals, but for the most part, it was sheep. Your animals have to be herded. They have to be kept. They have to be. I mean, if your herd pisses off, and it's it's you're in the middle of the grassland, you're starving to death.
You're finished.
You're dead. Yeah, you got to keep this. And then more importantly, to move around, you need horses. So you've got people that had to go and catch wild horses and break them. All right.
Yes.
So they had, and that is control. That is catching, holding, control. If you've ever seen how they catch wild horses, and I'm going to put some video clips of this in the history videos.
Brilliant.
If you've ever seen how Mongolians catch wild horses, they literally do like a leg sweep, a trip, and then when the horse they'll lasso it. They'll get down. Now, if you know anything about wild horses, they don't like to be taken by humans. So they lasso it. They get down next to the horse. They grab hold of its mane. So they're controlling its head and its mane. They'll take the lasso off. And then they'll foot sweep it so it can go down. And then they'll jump on its back. And then this thing will start bucking and going crazy. That foot sweep it's a daily thing. If you've got goats and you've got sheep and you've got cows and you've got to take them down for shearing. If you've got to take them down for any other, people don't realize that and if you know anything about herding and keeping livestock, horses, cows, even goats and sheep. If you're herding and you've got a flock of sheep and you've got more than one male, they're gonna kick each other's ass on a daily basis. They're gonna fight all day. Every day.
Absolutely.
So what do you have to do? You keep one male. No, you don't. You castrate them. You just keep one that's not castrated. The last time I checked, no male likes to be castrated. So you got to take that thing down. You've got to hold him down. You got to hold him down. So there's aspects of takedown, holding, and control on a daily basis of castration, branding, shearing, clipping, herding, taming, catching. Now you understand this has gone on since time immemorial, and it's a natural daily skill. And of course it went out to their form of entertainment and their wrestling into their combat, and then that became culture. Their entire existence is based on this. But here we are talking about, the Mongolians like to focus on this because that's their style. And then this style over here emerged. No, it's totally disconnected from reality. Almost everything is a natural progression of experience, environment, and necessity. And then we got these arts that emerged. And the same could be said about what you just said about Che style, about what they were Shuai Jiao being experienced and practicing X, Y, and Z, using it in this situation, and this is the conclusion that he came to. It's a condensation of his life's experience of learning and the environment from which it was cultivated in. That's it,
Absolutely brilliant. And I think that's a great thing of how every group of humans on this planet have had valuable things to contribute. That's the whole answer. That is brilliant, completely.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I cut you off there, but I thought I'd interject with that idea of style.
That is a great segue, and it leads to my Shuai Jiao activities too.
Good. Let's get into that.
But so that was pretty much in a nutshell. Like I said, we probably don't have enough hours to chew the fat like you and I really could. But that is definitely something that I realized in making friends. Again, the best part, hanging out with Brother Lavelle, man. This is something we kind of saw a lot. Him being a Baoding specialist, highly skilled, even excellent, and me being a Beijing style guy, and we coming together, seeing so many different things that when you get on the mat, is not a difference. But there are different nuances that become useful, and and getting together is the best because each side sees something from the other. Like, wow, that's clever, or that's keen, and it may even be the same exact method, just done in a different way.
It's details, slight
details. So that was definitely. It was actually hanging out and practicing with Lavelle actually changed my idea that I originally had with Shuai Jiao.
Nice.
Lo and behold, with all my base arts, I was still in that protective services, doorman, bouncer type of activities. And one thing is about protecting the interest and the liability of the people you're working for. You can't just be out there beating people up, You know,
No,
it's you know, you'll get fired, you'll get arrested. It's kind of and also not everybody even deserves that. People are intoxicated. They're not their normal self. Some people are totally normal and just evil as hell. Never mind.
Yeah.
I got good at beating people without hurting them, and I wanted to learn Shuai Jiao like all my life. Like, where are you gonna learn that from? And I always have a habit of doing what's not readily available. If everybody's doing one thing, I'll find a more rare version of it. This case being Beijing style Shuai Jiao.
Right.
I liked the way they did their things. It has a slightly more Manzu and Mongolian influence, which I like because my goal was always to one day reach Mongolia and learn the boku and do that whole thing. I never made it there, but that was my closest bet. So I'm making these arrangements to move to Beijing and do this and that, and lo and behold, Zhao Lian He Guangda was right in Los Angeles. And I remember finding him, and he's actually a Tianjin stylist, which is kind of like an offshoot of Beijing style. It overlaps, but
yeah. Well, they actually all come from the same place. I mean, this is the other thing that when I was researching the history. If you look at, that's the other thing, and I mean, we can talk a little bit about this because it's going to be in this episode, but they talk about Tianjin style as being a different style, Beijing being a different style, and like I said, Baoding being a different style. But if you trace the lineages, they all trace back to the Shampuying, and you can see who they trace back to.
Of course.
So,
of course.
Tianjin,
and Changdong Seng was from the mainland, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. He was from Baoding. Chang Dongsheng was a grand student of Ping Jingyi. Ping Jingyi is the guy that combined Shampuying Shuai Jiao with, he did what he called Shaolin Quan, just long style boxing most likely.
Nice.
And he created his system. But the wrestling comes from the Shampuying, and so does definitely. The Tianjin style, and so does the Beijing style. If we look at the Tianjin style, the people in the Republican era and into the more recent era that are credited with being the representatives of the Tianjin style, all of them can trace back to a guy called Cui, who was in the Shampuying, who they called Little Devil Cui. In fact, Empress Dowager Cixi, she gave him that nickname according to legend. She gave him that nickname. Now, they studied with him, and then they transmitted in Tianjin when it became an official sport, which was what happened in the Republican era. So there you've got that link to the Shampuying. He was teaching in Beijing. The Beijing style, most notably in today's remnants of what's left of what is considered the Beijing style, all can be traced back. Most of it, the most popular, can be traced back to a guy called Wan Ba Lao Ye. Wan Ba Lao Ye was he set up a school in the Tianqiao area of Beijing, and
I've heard Charlie mention him.
So when the Shampuying collapsed, the Qing dynasty collapsed, these guys were out of a job, so some of them decided to teach common folk. That was when Shuai Jiao went into the common folk realm. It was because these Shampuying people that were professional wrestlers needed to feed themselves. And Tianqiao is interesting because Wan Ba Lao Ye opened up a school there, and he was teaching straight up Shampuying Shuai Jiao. But if you know anything about Tianqiao, it was basically the entertainment district at that time for the lower strata of society. So you see all the street performers there. So like you had circus, you had martial artists, you had singers, and lots of people, and they would just do street performances and get money from the crowds, right? Whoever's watching, they give them a little bit of cash. So his student, Wan Ba Lao Ye's student, is the guy that combined. You've seen Shangsheng, right? You know, the Chinese crosstalk shows, which are just. They're skits, but it's like two people talking, funny stuff. He combined Shuai Jiao with crosstalk, and that is what is called Tianqiao Shuai Jiao. Yeah, so
we kind of channeled that a bit in our promotions of doing that whole street performance style of presentation to promote.
And you see, he combined that with that, and he did that giant flag post demonstrations, those big, which takes a tremendous amount of strength, but it's so it's connected. It's connected in that sense. But that was what he based his because look, you know as well as I do, when you've got two high-level wrestlers, when you've got two high-level Shuai Jiao guys, when you've got two high-level jiu-jitsu guys,
Yeah,
when
yeah.
they're fighting, it's so technical that people who don't understand what they're looking at get bored, you know?
Exactly.
So they had to make it, this was Tianqiao, they needed to make money from people. They needed to make it entertaining.
Yes.
Otherwise people aren't, so, you know, it's a natural progression. And it doesn't mean that they weren't wrestlers. They were very good wrestlers. They were
Oh, yeah.
top class wrestlers. But you know that's just an interesting offshoot of what occurred in Tianqiao.
Very
as well.
is, and that's kind of what you have to use to promote when you do public demonstrations and things with Shuai Jiao.
Exactly.
You kind of channel that
Exactly.
very thing. Me and my class, it was all worked out. We're all real competitors and trainees, but you know, when we're doing a demo to promote, we kind of have a stratagem lined up together. So
Yeah.
definitely, and that was very interesting. Yeah, you know, Tianjin guys, you know, specializing in grip, all the different little characteristics that each group emphasizes.
Yeah.
Then me and Lavelle playing around, we just, wow, we saw that we came to the same realization. I don't know if he was already there or not, but I said, wow, Shuai Jiao is Shuai Jiao. All of it's the same thing.
It's all the same.
You should study.
Yeah.
It's about studying the whole diaspora, not like, oh, I'm just going to do Beijing. It's Beijing style versus Baoding style. We're here in the States thinking thinking we're small at the time, maybe the only Beijing style group in the States, and 95% of everybody else is Baoding Taiwan style. So we had our little spirits of we have to defend Beijing style and this and that. But again, one of the great parts of martial arts is the friends you make. You compete, you make friends, you see each other again the following year. Oh shit, man, you got better, and it was fun, and we got to make friends. And you know, I end up coming back home. Lavelle's here. We've got a group getting together, and just good times, man. I learned a lot with that, and shout out to Lavelle, man. He is just killing the game right now, and yeah, man,
totally.
And that's when it comes to that kind of scenario we're in now. I mean, I brought Shuai Jiao in as my last skill set to deal with, ground wrestlers, ground fighters and that kind of thing in my occupation. I seem to be kind of decent at it. And I also looked at, complete training in a different way than a lot of people. I was I'm pretty much of the thought school. If you're a Kungfu person, and you're not versed in Sanda and Shuai Jiao, you're not serious about using it effectively in a situation. You're just not serious. You're out there, you're trying to use Gong Fa to fight with,
Right.
So that's how I ended up.
Look, I mean, you're not going to get away from the fact that if you don't have even a fundamental understanding of wrestling / grappling, you're at a disadvantage. So it's in your favor to at least have a fundamental understanding of those aspects, because first of all, wrestling and control are the basis of human combat since we were primates. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's going to come out naturally whether you like it or not. And if you're in that situation, you should at least you want to have a foot up. You want to have a little bit of better experience in that regard. So it's not going to hurt you in any shape or form to add that to your wheelhouse. So
I think that comes in back to being a complete researcher too. A lot of people in CMA kind of lack this in a way too, because I was taught, Sanda as a concept more than just a kickboxing and throwing sport. The concept, Ti Da Shuai Na, Shuai Na, striking, kicking, wrestling, and locking, or seizing.
Right.
And that's the 4 ways you can fight another human being without a weapon, and that was kind of how I was taught. So you have to ask yourself, you have to comb over your art and say, okay, what is my approach to this? What is my striking? If you say P-Tran, what is my striking approach with this available? What is my kicking approach? Kicking being anything from the waist down, hip, knee, or foot. Striking being anything, fist, elbow, shoulder, head, all striking.
Yeah.
How do I have options with P-Tran like that, for example, just anything? And just looking at that really in terms of a complete approach. People say, oh, I don't grapple. Well, every human being grapples. That was our first instinct. As soon as you tie up, you're grappling. Everybody
just got to watch
grapples.
kids play. Just watch kids
what
play.
you mean, yeah, what they mean to say is they don't do a lot of ground fighting. That's the distinction they forget to make. Everyone grapples, you know. So that was the kind of the thing, distinction between that and, you know, being knowledgeable in that personal space, because you will tie up. I remember having an argument with somebody said, "Oh, you know, if a grizzly and a tiger fought, the tiger would be more cunning and just stay away." I said, no. They're going to come together at some point, and there's going to be a big dust cloud, and you're not going to be able to see anything. A big dust cloud, and the
one's gonna die, and the other one's gonna be severely injured, one way or the other. So.
Or it'll be limping away while it's still smart. Like that tiger is going to be seriously hurt from the sheer power and overwhelming size. And I said, no way, dude. So the idea of you're going to come together, you're going to tie up, was something that I elaborate on, because again, I'm working in protective services where you can't just punch people in the face. You have to control them, call the police, keep yourself safe. So I kind of got good at that. And that's kind of led me into the Shuai aspect, which I think is it being older than a lot of methods. There's a debate whether it's the oldest, where I know it's older than a lot of things.
Well, it's old in every country. That's the truth of wrestling. Wrestling is the oldest thing on in humanity. I mean, for sure.
Period. And I believe that Mongolian wrestling and Shuai Jiao is older than a lot of Kungfu styles. To me, it just seems.
Well, Mongolians have been wrestling for a long time. You know, I mean, Shuai Jiao, and I'm showing this, and this is the purpose of this series, is to show that it doesn't actually come from the purported history that they're trying to say. It actually is connected to the Manchu, and in that sense, the Mongolian wrestling. It's not actually connected to any of the other stuff. And they've been wrestling forever. Yeah. So there's rock paintings of wrestlers in Mongolia. It's not like it's came from. It's the Mongolians, and the Mongolians historically were also the best. We see this in the records of the Qing dynasty as well. So it's very clear where even the Shampu Ying's roots come from. So
now the Manchus, that's what I thought.
Yeah, the Manchus had their own type of, but remember the Manchus are actually Altaic people, which are a similar root people. So it's all connected to older groups of Khitanese wrestling. You know, the Qitan, which are an older group, which became which a lot of these. Mongolian. It's because Mongolian is an eclectic term for many tribes. So we've got archaeological evidence that shows this very clearly. So
that's what I kind of hinted around. You gave me the business years ago when I put a 3,000-year-old tag on Shuai Jiao. Yeah. You said, "Are you sure?" That's kind of what I was alluding to. The whole diaspora that it descended from, which is kind of beyond, a little bit outside of just the Han Chinese, but the whole.
Well, we got to give credit where credit's due. This has been hidden for too long. It's the Mongolians and the grassland people, and mostly the nomadic cultures that we can attribute to today's Shuai Jiao to. That's where it comes from, and we need to say that. I mean, these were kingdoms. These were groups of people that were disconnected from Han, and they're not included in their Han history. They had their own history. Totally. They developed outside of it, and their wrestling has been there forever. So. We can be pretty clear about this,
absolutely. That's brilliant, and that research you did is brilliant also about lifestyle circumstance, cattle and livestock and that kind of thing.
You got into. I mean, were you wrestling in China first, or did you start doing it in the States first? Where did you start actually studying it first?
In Shanxi, actually.
Nice.
My Xingyi Xinyi now people are all wrestlers. They're all Xingyi Shuai Jiao people. So that was my first exposure to it. They all wrestled, which was very interesting to me. And a couple of my classmates were real ringers. They really excelled because in those tournaments there were no weight classes.
Yeah,
which was interesting to me. And
traditionally there isn't.
And one of my classmates is a small guy. I mean, he's small. He's like maybe 5'4", $130. He was just cleaning people's clocks. 200 pounds, whoever. I've got it on video. He was destroying, and I was just like, wow. And I never forgot that. No jacket. They had no jackets on. My first time in Sanji, and Uncle Yang had us doing it. No jackets, and a lot of single and double leg, a lot of leg catching, a lot of panna, and those kind of methods. A lot. So that was my first. I kind of have a habit of panna and leg seizing and single and leg picks in my Shuai Jiao because of that. I'm always going for the legs and that kind of thing. And that was my first exposure, which really was interesting to me. The contact and it was just fun. And the Jibun Gong was just really awesome. And I fell in love with it ever since then. And then that was kind of my exposure in Sanxi Shuai Jiao through Uncle Yang and the guys. The girls, everybody wrestled.
Yeah, of course.
So everybody, so all the Xingyi Dao people in Taigu are wrestlers, which is really intrigued me. And then when I got over here, I just found what resonated, and I found He Jiao and then took to it immediately, and it was really good. We took a liking to each other. He's very fond of me. I'm very fond of him. My classmates were awesome, and I just jumped right into it. We just excelled, trained, I competed, and man, grabbed a few gold medals, and mixed around in a couple of weight classes, and it just made a lot of great friends, and it was very educational to me. And it took my Kungfu to a completely different level. When you talk about space and distance and these kind of things, and how Chinese martial arts is portrayed like in earlier times of running away from grapplers and backing away and these kind of things. And I said, wow, that's not really totally accurate, and for lack of education, I had the mindset that a lot of Southern methods that weren't propagated in the mainland kind of maybe missed the Shuai Jiao aspect, so to speak. Yeah. At least here in the States, at least here in the States, among the Hongga groups and Wing Chun and different things, you didn't see a lot of Shuai fight. You didn't see a lot of wrestling, stand-up wrestling maneuvers.
As you said in the beginning, wrestling is very much a northern Chinese focused aspect.
Right.
And again, this harks back to exactly what I was saying earlier. Like, we keep talking about these Han records, and you're talking about places like Xi'an, which was Chang'an, and
Xi'an,
but actually, the issue is that the majority of the wrestling is from north of that, which is exactly connected to the Mongol and the Manchus and the
exactly.
They brought it's no surprise that the further south you go, the less of this type of wrestling and focus of wrestling you see. It's not. So if it was a Han thing, like when the Sung Dynasty, when it split and went south, when the Mongols invaded, you would have seen the wrestling carry on down to the south, but it didn't.
This is exactly what I mean. Exactly.
So yeah, there you go. I mean, it's pretty clear why wrestling is so prominent in the north, and it's because of these grassland and okay, we can't call the Manchus grassland people, but they are a similar tribe that lived in the forests of northeast China. So
Jin tribe, which is now Dongbei.
Yeah. So there we go. So I mean, it's connected to these groups of people. So
I found that to be interesting because in the States, a lot of early exposure to Chinese martial arts was Southern. Hongga, Chai Li Fu, Wing Chun, Bak Mei, all these different ones. No type of wrestling, and it's there, but not being aware of it. So I found that very interesting when you see back in the day the Gracies would say, the Kung Fu guy, as you speak, is helpless, and he's just running, just backpedaling. And from the group of people I came from, they wouldn't be running. They'd be like, hey, you want that lead leg? Have it. I'm actually putting it out there for you. A totally different paradigm as far as how we look at our skill set and what's there and how it's being implemented and what has contributed to a lot of the current paradigm concerning Kung Fu and Chinese martial arts. A lot of people have never even heard of Shuai Jiao. And I'm like, there's a couple of these fake video people makers. I've seen them when they finally came across the Shuai Jiao video. They're like, oh, wait a minute, this is something.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, yeah. And from my paradigm, it's something that's present in all Chinese martial arts. You talk about Tanglang, praying mantis, Tai Chi to me is mostly
Definitely
a
in the
wrestling.
north.
Yeah,
Definitely
in
in
the
the
north.
north, you know? Yeah.
And again, also in the north, where a lot of people would look at a lot of these practitioners of long fist styles per se and say, oh, well, that's just, you know, oh, really? Well, most of these northern people are wrestlers.
Yeah.
Northern Shaolin, Tongbei, Baji Chuan, you name it. So I was interested in bringing that more to the forefront too, and making sure that my particular Kung Fu had a more complete stratagem. And also my methods being Northern methods. And again, my family are all wrestlers. And I think it's very important to be included in the diaspora of CMA today. I think it adds a different aspect. I have a lot of friends from other types of Kung Fu. I got a couple of Honga friends, and, and we play around. It's like, bro, this stuff is right in your methods. You just didn't see it. You may have thinking a shift from a marble straight punching to shifting to a left Kung Fu and punching is punching, but actually that's probably a throw.
It's a pull and a throw, kind of like a Tai Otoshi kind
Yes.
of throw in judo.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's amazing how a lot of practitioners don't know this. They don't see this. You're not even working with your whole skill set. So getting comfortable with tying up. And then also, I don't know how long we're going to hang out, man. I certainly have no limit in time, but we do have a lot to cover that we probably won't cover in this call. But the so-called lack of sparring in CMA, like, very interesting. Is Duelian useful or useless? All these questions.
No, it is. These are all progressions, and that's why people look, if they're looking at it from the wrong perspective, you'd say, "Oh, but that's not fighting." No, but it's a progression. Look, is a push-up fighting?
Yeah. Neither is shadow boxing.
Yeah, exactly.
Neither is shadow boxing. Like,
So,
what are we talking about here?
Right.
And
you got to understand how it fits into the big picture.
Yes.
The problem is if you're missing pieces of that picture. And we got to be honest, a lot of practitioners are missing pieces of that picture. So in those senses, you might criticize certain aspects, but let's not criticize the practice as a whole. Let's understand that is, a lot of people have lost bits and pieces of the big picture, or by design, their own teachers have decided not to focus on certain aspects of the picture. But that is not representative of the whole picture. That's representative of those people. We should be clear about
this. So they're missing aspects of the picture, and they're missing certain aspects of experience.
Yeah.
We can look at how long China's been closed. At a certain time, nobody was getting in or out of China. Forget it. And compare that with the West, where we have a lot of different people, different backgrounds, different tastes in food, clothes, and in fighting methods. So in the West, we have a lot more of a smorgasbord of people. It's more likely for you to have a wrestling friend. I mean, China's different today. But let's say in the 90s or 80s, we've got wrestling friends. We've got people that do all kinds of stuff, and we've probably played around before. When you haven't been around a lot of other things, the necessity to know certain things maybe wouldn't have arisen. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, we have a different experience. I think that Western practitioners could possibly do a lot for Chinese martial arts because of that, because of how many different people from different walks, how much of a melting pot it is in the West in general.
Let's get into that, because I mean, your side of the world there, I know that you're slowly starting to focus again, and now hopefully with the COVID recovery, etc., you'll be able to start teaching more, and that's something you wanting to do, and start to spread and offer the teaching that you're teaching, etc. What are you doing over there? What have you got planned?
Man. Just what you said, COVID has been devastating. And trying to transmit things to the web, without contact, without a UK, for example, been a real challenge. So I've been transitioning into that. COVID kind of really changed the game. I mean, think of Lavelle ended up progressing and getting even further on his personal journey. Congrats on that. But we had a little Shuai Jiao group right here in New York, and but those kind of groups kind of dissolved once COVID came. How do you still train? It buried so many things. Even meeting up with people in person. And today we have this paradigm of, does it work and this and that. So you feel a way about getting on screen and doing something solo with nobody else to show what it does, quote unquote. Which, aside from that, there's a million other elements of that. We talked about that earlier about COVID was a prime example of if everything is contact and you can't do anything without contact. And I may be exaggerating the notion a bit.
Yeah.
How can you train when you're just by yourself? All of a sudden, Taolo isn't so silly, is it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if you saw in the beginning of the pandemic, John Danaher released a whole bunch of COVID solo jiu-jitsu drills to keep you going while you can't go to jiu-jitsu because everything's closed because of COVID.
Oh, amazing. That's brilliant. I didn't see that.
Basically, that's exactly... Yeah, he released it for free. Very nice of him. I mean, I highly respect him as a teacher. I mean, I practice jiu-jitsu as well, so... But yeah, I mean, that's I highly respect him. And he released it for free, which was a great service to people that, but for us as Chinese martial artists, we're good. We know what we're going to do in the times that we can't go do other things, But I can understand how people needed that at that time. But I thought it was kind of funny because I'm like, oh, great. Jiu-jitsu people are finding out the value of solo training and Taolu, basically. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Jiu-jitsu and Taolu. You did your jiu-jitsu in Beijing.
Yeah, I've been doing it for 8 years or so here.
And 8 years is well before the current diaspora. So that's interesting that you've had that there. I've been dabbling a tad in catch wrestling and sambo. I'll get a chance to actually do it for real one day, pretty soon, hopefully.
Well, the original teacher that I started training was from the States here, and he was the first black belt to come to China and teach. He'd been here for a long time.
Amazing.
He was a Pedro. I don't know if you know who Pedro Sauer is. If you ever see that Gracie Challenge fight where he fought Mr.
Legendary.
Utah. Yeah. That was Pedro Sauer. That was Pedro Sauer that he beat that bodybuilder. But he also trained with Hickson, so he had a different mentality. I mean, it was no nonsense. He was in your line of work. He was a security officer and ex-policeman. So that's where I got started. And a few years after I started, he returned to the States. One of his students, also an American, carried on teaching and then at the beginning of the pandemic, he left, understandably. And I carried on with there's actually there's quite a big jiu-jitsu community in recent years in Beijing specifically, but in China it's become very... Yeah, I think in Beijing at one point there were 30 black belts and probably around 20 of them from Brazil. Of course, the pandemic has made a lot of them go back, but I was training then after that with a guy from Brazil. So it's been pretty good in general. The level's pretty good of the guys that I've been training with here. But yeah, that's how it started.
Very interesting. And in your jiu-jitsu experience, did you experience? I imagine it automatically comes from a lot of respect and the quality of the teacher and the environment. But a Wuda aspect in that.
Yeah, look, I'll tell you one thing, though. I mean, Chinese people in general have a different way of conducting themselves in society than what we're used to in the West. So, for the most part, the level of respect, etc., and the way they conduct themselves in terms of what we would say martial ethics is... Chinese people, for the most part, they're not going to sit and openly try to insult you or speak badly of you. They're very respectable and, they just get on with their own thing and they'll listen to the teacher.
Yes.
So for the most part, the environment has always been very, very positive. It's always been a very good, healthy environment to train in. I mean, they're serious. Of course, you're going to get your one or two assholes and jackasses, but for the most part, it's not like that. Most people are pretty nice. So, yeah.
And is that just the thing from the teacher, or is it something that's assumed? I mean, I've had my experiences. Back in the doorman days, it seemed like it was all jiu-jitsu guys causing problems, you name it. And I'm a huge Hickson Gracie fan. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the UFC from the first time it came out. I've got a friend of mine, her son remembers me back in the day, like, oh shit. And that was his first memory of when MMA really, really caught on. But I man, even one of Hickson's people, and Hickson is, I mean, he's top notch as a man. I respect him on so many levels, but a couple of students causing problems at the hotel, choking people out, just being ruffians.
Well, that's why I say. I mean, I don't
very
think
interesting.
Yeah, I don't
Score
think
one
Hickson.
for.
Yeah, I don't think Hickson instilled bad morals and ideas into his students. But there's only so much a teacher can affect you in relation to the society and the environment you grow up in. So that's why I mentioned this earlier. Like in general, Chinese people aren't, for the most part, like that. So
Gotcha.
the teacher reinforcing that would have a bigger aspect and effect here than it would in, say, a society where there's a lot of brazen egos, and that's very much a commonplace thing. There's only so much a teacher can do to mitigate that. You know what I mean? So,
exactly. Well, it can be emphasized, and I think that's one of the values of. I think a lot of schools have this. Probably not just the Chinese martial arts thing, but being that there's a phrase for it, Buddha, Budo, these kind of things that I think are important when you're talking about the development of the individual. Like I think it's really important. I think there's certain unique things about it. It seems unique to me. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because in our branch, it's a part of it. You have the whole 2D thing and the whole pious part of the whole experience, and even if your should I becomes better than you, you're still a senior and all that kind of stuff. I think it's good for society. I think people need that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that very well that. Even with a society and a culture of ethics within Chinese martial arts as part of the importance that is handed down from the teacher to the students, as well as I do that even when you started learning with a teacher, you didn't immediately buy Shi, and he would check your character. He would check your character for a few years, and then decide whether or not he wants to continue teaching you.
Yes.
So even he knew the limitations of his ability to influence and change somebody who has a very bad character. And those are the kind of people that they'd say, I don't think this is for you. I'm not going to teach you. That's it.
Right.
And you could sit and say, well, he didn't do his best to change the student. Maybe he didn't, but maybe he saw something in the student that he wasn't able to change. And instead of dealing with that, he thought, I'm going to nip this in the bud and leave it right here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So. For the most part, I've had good experiences with people I've exchanged with. A lot of BJJ guys, they're intrigued with Shuai Jiao big time too. And it's been a good experience overall. On that note too, as far as sparring and not sparring, Shuai Jiao, I had already kickboxed early in my life. Shuai Jiao competition kind of gave me that roughness when I played around with my BJJ friends. Wasn't so easy to do certain things. I got that kind of thumbs up, and I got that kind of thumbs up in Sanchi when I first came in contact with Shuai Jiao. They were like, "Wow, you're not easy to trip and take down." And I wanted to capitalize on that. So back to my Chinese martial arts family out there. Learn that Shuai Jiao, learn that Sanda, learn how to throw your hands. Is an ancient saying I invented.
An ancient saying you invented.
Yes, it's an ancient Chinese saying I invented. When the enemy's face is open, punch his face. Don't worry, it'll still be Taiji. It'll still be Tonglong. It'll still be Bajitron. But punch his face. Don't veer off and do some kind of magical hocus pocus and try to do Peng Ji Liu An. If you win by left or right to the face, than good taiji. In my as far as I'm concerned, you hear people that say, "Oh, I didn't see any taiji. All he did was kickbox. All the Xingyi guy did was kickbox." Well, yeah. It's not that it disintegrated. Kickboxing means you're in a fight.
Yeah. Well, it also has to do, like, people that are commenting for the most part are watching a format or some sort of arranged.
Yes.
Like I don't mean arranged in terms of outcome, but there's an agreed upon format that you will have this fight in. And the second you have an agreed upon aspect, and Sanda is a good example of this. I mean, it's a format for the most part in terms of competitive Sanda. So what are you going to see people that enter Sanda doing? Well, they're going to try to do the most suitable aspects with regards to that format. So it's going to end up looking very similar. And that's not to say that those methods aren't the natural way to do them. They are. They naturally evolved, though, in that format. So if, for example, there were other aspects that were involved, let's say you changed the gloves and put jackets on, then whatever evolved in that format would change a little bit. It would look slightly different. Yeah, so there is that part of it too.
Yeah,
so,
I just don't agree with the whole thing of things disintegrate into just kickboxing. That's to me, Sanda also means you're simply in a fight. You're not necessarily in the sport activity. You're in a fight.
Yeah, you're referring to Sanda as a concept. But for the most part, when people, unfortunately, as time goes on, the longer it goes, it is a format now, and then what comes out of it is the most suitable and effective methods for that format, and that's what's going to come.
It's a format, it should become a mindset more than just a format, so that a lot of traditional heads can be a little more in a sensible mind frame as far as what they're doing and what they're expecting.
Exactly. Well, they could get into that because it's a format. You could go in there and you can get involved irrespective. So the more open a format is, the better. And if we go from something as restrictive of, let's say, these are very, very broad examples, but let's just say you're trying to compare Sanda and Judo. Judo is restrictive in the attire and the methods allowed. It's going to be a lot harder for, let's say, a Xingyi person to enter a Judo tournament. But he could more easily apply his skills in a Sanda tournament. Why? Because it's a little bit more open. It's got a little bit more range of allowed techniques that are closer to what he does. And then he can go in there and experiment and get experience. If he wants to, if he's so inclined. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Yes. And then there is life, self-defense in the street.
Exactly. So there's that
the mindset.
The last part of when we talk about openness, that is the most open.
Yes,
absolutely. It's so open. You actually don't know what to expect. It's that open. So yeah,
exactly. And the blending of the two, because I've heard people say, "Oh, well, the street and the ring are two totally different things," and I didn't really agree. I feel like you need to be somewhat ring ready on the street, if you will.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So swinging back around. There's so many things we can hit so many detours. I didn't get into my what I had going on, my Tongbei activities as far as that coming around. As far as what I got going on, I kind of segued away from that. I'm recently presenting my body of work and making it available through YouTube and Patreon. My movement is Ancient Games Athletics. That's kind of an attempt to bridge the gap between what's traditional and modern. Great things that are still good for you. At one time, kettlebells was something old that came back, Indian clubs. Same thing with martial arts. Ancient Games Athletics, and we are offering a Patreon course on YouTube. And the page is called Club Jingru, of course.
Okay. Nice.
We looking at Jingru as, of course, the warrior class in CMA and people that are kind of aside from society. What's the norm?
Yeah.
We're still doing these wacky Kungfu arts, so I think we're prime candidates for the moniker. And so that's something that the people can look for from me. The Patreon course on YouTube at Club Jingru. And we're offering a complete Xingyi Dao syllabus as well as Martial Tongbei.
Right, and that's what the other thing we didn't really talk about, because you got into the Ma Family Tongbei. So
Yes,
we
I
can
did.
talk a little bit about that. We're going to put all your links in the show notes and everything, so to all your endeavors. But
Nice.
talk a little bit about how you got into the Ma Family stuff.
Oh my God, everything is such a journey. Oh my God, bro, what a can of worms. So back before I even met Master Li, I was always tinkering with Tongbei and Piqua and these kind of things, because I figured in the completion of the practice, I didn't want to just only be doing Neja stuff. I wanted to have both, because I figured I observed a couple of people that were really into practical methods, the practical word underlining, and they were maybe out of shape and not well, but they could fight very well, in a certain scenario. But I always wanted to move and be immortal and be young for the rest of my life. I believe that movement is key. Something that's, what are you going to do? Can you chi sao more than one person at a time? Kind of difficult. Me coming from the bouncer thing. What if you get jumped? Can you really do a 3 sao on 2 people? Can you submit more than one person at a time? No, you can't. Sometimes it's time to move your ass and club the hell out of people and move very well. So that, that led me to tinkering around with Tongbei on my own and Piqua back in the day around, 2000 or something. Lo and behold, I'm researching how to enhance the skills of our Xingyi Dao in free fighting and in sparring. And as you know, Church's Xingyi is influenced by Chuo Jiao.
You're right. Yeah. My teacher also did Chuo Jiao, by the way.
Nice. Yeah, Beijing, I believe it. So it's influenced by Chuo Jiao. Li Fujian met the guy and got kicked and whatever, and they exchanged. And I love Chuo Jiao. If you can't tell, I like weird stuff that's not common or available.
Well, that's an interesting tale. I mean, here's an allegory. My teacher, he did Xingyi with his Xingyi teacher. His Xingyi teacher was his first teacher, and he did Xingyi from he did first. He taught him Shaolin Chuan, and then as he got older, he taught him Xingyi, and that was his core. And in those days, because it was a long time ago, sometimes martial artists would meet each other and they would test each other out. And he told me that one day he met a guy who started using his legs on him, and he was like, and he was like, okay, I need to learn how to use my legs more. So when he spoke to his teacher, he's like, this guy was, I think he knew the guy was doing Chuo Jiao, so he's like, he wanted to learn some Chuo Jiao. So his teacher took him to Wu Binlo, who's famous. Wu Binlo.
I know that name. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so he started studying Chuo Jiao Fanzi with Wu Binlo. Way back when. But interesting allegory. Sweet. Same thing. He got kicked, and he was like, "That's cool. I need to learn a bit of that." So
exactly. Yeah. So and you see that and Xingyi people are saying, "Well, where's all the kicks? Where's the legs? Isn't it Northern method?" And as we both know, the kicks are there. They're just not shown. At our range, it's usually going to be a knee, going to be a knee or a dung tui, or something like that, or maybe even
exactly.
So Che style is influenced by Chuo Jiao and by Tan Tui. So I was creating a sparring activity for our Xingyi Dao, and I said I'm gonna, and at the time Master Li had taught me Yun Yang Jiao, which is basically Mandarin duck kicking a routine out of Che Xingyi. Che Xingyi is Yun Yang Jiao, and he said you're the only second person I've taught this to, and it's very interesting. And, me coming from having a Muay Thai background and Taekwondo, I like to kick. I can kick very well. Flexibility is kind of natural to me. And I wanted to, of course, bring the legs into the Ti Da Shuai Na paradigm as far as sparring. So I said, I want to, and I had a real thing for Dongbei Chuo Jiao a lot. It's kind of rugged and kind of, rough looking. And again, I wanted the rare of everything. It's kind of a curse. I always look for the most rare versions. So there I am, like, I'm going to bring the Xingyi leg, the kicks out of the Yun Yang Jiao. Yeah. So I said, I'm going to, and I had a friend of mine that was opening a burger restaurant in Liaoyuan in Dongbei.
Okay.
So I go out there this crazy idea. I said, when I'm done in Sanxi, I'm coming to you. And I'm moving to Dongbei. because I'm thinking if I move there, he can get me to Shenyang, and I can get my English teaching job there. And there I'm in the heart of Dongbei Chuo Jiao. So of course that, he got caught up in mafia and women, and I never made it. I never made it to Shenyang. So there I am, like, oh my God, I'm living here, like I'm not on the mission, and my Kungfu brother, Yu Jiao-san, he said, well, hey, you should go and learn from the Ma family. The Ma family's Chuo Jiao is Dongbei Chuo Jiao. I said, what is it? And mind you, I'd already been tinkering with Tongbei and Pigua on my own from years ago. So I go on this mission. I leave my brother in Dongbei, go way up to Siping, and catch a train. And I go to first stop Changzhou with Wang Zhihai and those guys. So that's my first formal introduction to Pigua Jiao. So I'm there with him, living in Master Wang Zhihai's place. And he's teaching me every day, crack of dawn, 5:30 a.m. Hey, get up, sending me out in the freezing cold, teaching me for about 3 weeks. And that was grueling and awesome. Shout out to Grandmaster Wang. So this is all in a delay because people aren't where they're supposed to be. The teachers where I was going weren't there yet. So I go to Changzhou, do my time there. He Jiao, my Shuai Jiao coach, is at home in Tianjin, which is only 30 minutes away from Changzhou by bullet train. Leave Changzhou, go to Tianjin, spend a beautiful 3.5 weeks with He Jiao and his family during holiday time. Amazing. So that finally comes, and I don't know what to expect. I'm going down there with these Ma people, and coach is like, don't worry. If anything, just come back or call me. I'll come get you. I'll beat them. It's like, don't worry. So so my Kung Fu brother says, don't worry. I told him all about you. I told him you're a crazy person. You're a crazy Kung Fu person. And this kind of messed them up because they weren't used to that kind of term. Like, what is a crazy? Means I'm crazy for this stuff. Night and day, I'm thinking about it. Sure. That's the term, which is my next tattoo, by the way. But I went down to Southwest University in Chongqing, in Sichuan. Yeah, and I met Dr. Chen Baochang, who was the head of the Martial Studies Department at that university. It's a sports and agriculture university in Chongqing. And he's a 2D of Ma Mingda and a Kung Fu brother of who is now my teacher, Guo Naihui. So, Guo Naihui had a couple of 2D down there, and he heard, Dr. Chen told him about me. Dr. said, I'm not good enough to really be a teacher, but I know somebody that is. He's coming to teach you. So Master Guo, he came all the way from Lanzhou just to share with me.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it melted my heart, man. And
that's not close.
The damn Chinese sometimes, man, I mean, God, they get you right in the heart, man. Sweet people, man. Sweet people, man. Yeah. So, I'm looking at this and everything. Remember, I'm there because of my Chuo Jiao investigation for bringing out my kicks and the Sanda aspects of my Xingyi Dao system. Lo and behold, they put a bian gun in my hand. So I'm like, oh shit, what is this? Totally fell in love with it. Weeks later, Master Guo comes. He gets off the plane, and Dr. Chen says, don't be fooled by his appearance. He's got a head like a pumpkin. No, he said he's got a head like a goblin and shoulders like a gorilla and hands like skillets. So of course he gets off the plane. He looks just like that big smiling jack-o'-lantern face. And he looks me up and down and says, you could be a genius at Tongbei. So me and my Western ass. I'm like taken back. Really? I could? Yeah. Because the Chinese don't give compliments very easily. Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. But here comes this jolly guy that you could be. He's like, you have long arms, good height. Yeah. You could be a genius. So he got me from that off the top. Right. And I discovered this menagerie of Ma Family Tongbei, which was totally mind-blowing. And it just so happens that his specialty out of their multiple skill sets was Chuo Jiao. and he did
Wow.
the whole tway in the back kick in the hotel, drunk with rubber flip-flops on, and cracked the tile on the floor.
Oh, it's
And I was
exactly
like,
it. Ho Liao Tui, right? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, whole tway. And I said, oh shit. This is the
Yeah.
guy. And he was just very affectionate and very encouraging. And I ended up inheriting, for lack of a better word, all the skills, because it wasn't like he was just going to jump into Shuai Jiao training like I wanted. I had to do everything. I had to do the Pigua first.
You have
I
to
had
do the
the
system.
Bagua Zhang. Yes, I had to do
Yeah.
the system, which was very. I didn't even know how broad that system was, and I had
it's a big
known
system.
about that system. I had known that system for quite a while, but where was I going to learn it from here in the States? Nowhere. So
Yeah.
it was amazing that here I am. This guy's looking at me with 2D eyes, like, you are my student now. And I'm like, I'm like thinking to myself, oh my God, I have too much Kungfu. How did this happen? I didn't do it on purpose. So he and I bonded. Me and Master Guo, Sifu Guo, bonded really heavy, like personally. And that was kind of it. The Biangon, the Pigua, the Bajitran, Fanzi, Chuoja, the whole thing. It's just a golden method. And come to find out, he and my Xingyi Shifu, Master Li, are distant classmates because of the sports physical education college thing. They're both graduates there. So it's like they consider themselves classmates, and because of that, and it was very interesting. And that was my story and I've been going ever since. I lost him for a couple of years, lost contact, and we found him, and we've been going pedal to the metal ever since. We met a couple of other teachers that weren't really, everybody's different, even in the same branch. And I wanted to finish what I had started. I wanted to finish what I had started. And this was around 2014 where this all began. And Ma Tongbei is actually a big part of my life, a permanent fixture of my life.
I've seen that. I've seen also how enthusiastic you are about all of that content as well. And it's really good.
You said you saw what?
I've seen how enthusiastic you are about all of that stuff. Yeah. And it's good because it's not well known, particularly in the States, and it's such a, it's an important component in the general, especially in the more modern era of Chinese martial arts, what the Ma family did. But it's good to see somebody that's so active and so passionate about it and trying to promote it there. So
yes, it filled the completeness of my personal systems. I figured I need some type of long fist, for lack of a better term, not just drawn in small stuff, economic. We also need to reach out and stretch the tips of the body and stretch the tendons and move very well and move. Yeah. And once I really got into reaching out and really being able to move, hey, my Xingyi improved, my Bagua improved, everything improved because I stretched and I actually improved my movement ability. And it was just really dynamic because I had a feeling about that because here in the States, people are so much into usage, which I call use. I don't like the word application because application are ideas and they're not really real-time things. So I consider so-called applications concepts. I consider Yongfa concepts. In the real situation, it turns into something else. But I noticed that we became more athletic, just more healthy all around, and having a complete inner and outer boxing in our toolbox. There was years ago, I have a Kung Fu brother who's a 2D tool, very well-known Tai Chi master. And they're really good at neutralizing people in an unrehearsed fashion. Very unbelievable. I saw it. I said, "Oh my God, you got to take me to meet him." And he's doing stuff to my classmate, my Kung Fu brother, that people would say is fake on YouTube. Just watching.
Right.
Oh, that's fake. Oh, that's fake. That's fake. No way. And I know my guy. My guy's Brazilian by nationality, and his favorite things are Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Yin Shibagua, and Beijing Taiji, Beijing Wu style Taiji. So he takes me, and his teacher is very well known and kind of on the heavy side. And I remember hearing a statement, well, he's got so much Taiji skill, he doesn't need any Kungfu. And I was like, interesting. Interesting. Lo and behold, later on, when I saw the same teacher, he developed diabetes and these kind of things. I was like,
that's common.
Wait a minute. How does that, and kind of on the even more heavier side, out of shape. And that's when it dawned on me. You know what? Cultivating an economy is good, but you also need to move your ass. Movement is life. Yeah. And that's when I really got motivated to incorporate enough movement so we get a complete training, inner and outer. You know what I mean? Yeah. So Ma Tongbei fell right into the slot, and I hold them both dearly. Teachers can be very different. Master Li is he's like my father. I had a Baisher. He appeared in my darkest hour of my life. He Jiao is of course my teacher, but he's like a very close best friend. We helped each other. He was new to the States. We're like friends. He respects me as a practitioner in my own right. Master Guo Naihui, he's a jolly, happy, laughy, strict, demanding type of guy. So these three different teacher styles really gave me a good smorgasbord of different things. So nice. I told myself no more skills after the Tongbei system. But
I think that's
there
enough.
And behold,
I think you got it covered there.
Yeah, I still got to get myself on the mat and roll around with the sambo and catch people. At least get myself a blue belt in BJJ or something. Just to get in there and feel it. Get in there
it's good experience. It's good. I mean, that's why I went there. I started simply because I was like, I don't know much about what happens down there on that floor, and these guys are really good at it. But let me go in there and see what I can stop them from doing. And that was what I did on my plan on the first session was I'm going to throw these guys and then try stop whatever they're trying to do to me on the floor. And the same thing like you were saying about your experience. My first day there, they're like, oh my God, there's something different about the way you move. It's like you're not easy to do what we normally do to people. So I was like, all right, so let's build on that. Let's build on that.
That's why I picked up Shuai Jiao, was to make myself very difficult and very, very difficult. And that's what I used Shuai Jiao so that I wouldn't back away from wrestlers. I wouldn't back away from ground grapplers. Exactly. Meet them head on. And find that the grappling and tie-up skill is right within our Kungfu. It's not an outside skill. This is what's happening a lot today. You see these challenge matches, and you see the what's the goofy thunder Taiji guy that got his clock cleaned?
Ma Baoguo. No, Weilei.
Weilei, and this is and my opinion. Like we talked about Sanda earlier, as far as a concept too. I don't think that today the Sanda and the Kungfu guys should be two different people. They should be the same person.
Yeah.
A Kungfu person, traditional Kungfu, should spend a decent amount of time in Sanda and in Shuai Jiao.
Well, the thing is, I mean, whether they get involved directly in the sporting side of Sanda here is another issue, but it's very simple to be able to get some protective gear with your classmates and go from control, because like Xingyi is structured like that. You go from
that's
set
what I mean.
to controlled to some sparring. Oh, you don't mean the actual sport of Sanda. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
I don't mean trying to necessarily become the next Liu Hailong in that way. I mean just getting involved and approaching your method from the concept of fighting. And I say fighting, I mean Sanda. When you should be approaching how to use Tanglong, and the opponent is a boxer or a kickboxer or a wrestler, so that you have an educated idea when you're conveying the fight aspect of training. How can you address implementing something against boxing when you don't know any boxing? You have no idea, or you do some lame shoot, a lame single or double leg takedown it's not even correct. Nobody bends over at the waist and bends their head down. They're driving on their knees and they're driving on their knees, duck walking, and their torso is upright. They're hugging your leg to their chest. You know what I mean?
Right.
Not to mention how many times I learned and used the single and double leg in Shuai Jiao.
So, that's one of the kudos, like one of the good things my original BJJ teacher was. He was so practical and down to earth. I mean, I remember some days where he'd sit, because a lot of those guys were only doing that. I mean, I've been doing Chinese martial arts for 20 years before that, and I was, doing that. That was just extra. I was just going to that as extra. But the other guys, a lot of the guys, their only exposure to martial arts was what they were doing in BJJ. And I remember the one day he was like, all right, shoot that single down on me. And I remember he was at that time probably a blue or a purple belt. And the guy shot in on the teacher, ducked his head down, bent over at the waist. Teacher just kneed him right in the face. He's like, boom.
Ouch.
And the guy was like, oh, I understand. Yeah, good, you understand.
I understand.
Yeah. Other times he would say, oh, cool, so you think you know what's going on with your stuff on the floor there. And then he'd say, he'd throw one of the guys, here, put on these MMA gloves. You on the bottom, stop him from hitting you. And you hit him, you stop him from hitting you. And he's like, yeah, come on.
Oh, wow.
Do that, and that's like, a lot of people need that, you need that, a little reality check, so, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, interesting time we're in. I'd like to see everyone become great friends and it become one great exchange. I've certainly been a fan of MMA since the beginning. I'm a fan of everything. I've made friends where, I meet a karate guy and he's, I love seeing good karate. Doesn't mean I want to do it. No, but I can relate to his passion.
And relate.
I can appreciate his passion because I have a passion similar. He may have looked at some of the weird stuff I was doing and said, oh, wow, hey, man, what's that? Hey, stop. Finish what you started first and then talk to me later. Don't be a cherry picker all over the place. Get good at something. Don't become mediocre at many things. That's kind of what I did. I'm a fan of everything. I love to see good judo. I'm mesmerized when I watch capoeira. I'm like, oh, my God. The
talking about movement. Yeah, talking about movement. Yeah.
Yes, you have to look at it and see what you're supposed to see from it. You can't look and say, "Oh well, I bet if he did that in Bellator, blah, blah, blah." It's ridiculous. It's not, there's a place for everything. Nothing is useless.
Right. Yeah, good. And on that note, I think that's a good place. I mean, we've gone on for over 2 hours. We can do a follow-up on this, and we can get some more of your stories that you left out and your experiences in the future. So,
if you want to, I'm warning you.
No, that'll be good. We'll do that.
It would be good to get together again and talk more directly, shop, and the current symptoms of what we're facing as traditional stylists, in particular CMA people, and that I look forward to that. I certainly love what you've been doing there, man, and
thanks,
we look to you. We look to you, brother Byron, over here in the States. So yeah, he's there, blazing away. You've been there a long time, and man, I certainly appreciate what you're doing. Shout out to Master D, big fan of what you guys do. And man, all Xingyi practitioners around, I give a salute to. Today it's all about learning and evolving and helping each other out. So, salute.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Yeah, and good luck with your new stuff. We'll put all your whatever you want included in terms of contact details and relevant links and information. Put it in the show notes.
Yes,
show notes so people can find you and get involved with what you're doing there. And we'll be in touch soon.
Nice. Yes, sir.
All right.
All my friends out there in the martial world, from this to that, keep training, enjoy yourself, have fun, make friends, and I give you all a salute. Thank you, Brother Byron. Cheers.
Thank you. We'll chat soon. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.